So welcome everybody. For those who don't know me, my name's Sally, one of the Bath for Europe team. And we've got apologies from Emma from our team, who unfortunately is unwell today, so hopefully she's feeling better. But welcome everybody who has made it. And like I say, apologies for keeping you waiting whilst we tried to sort out a few glitches. And of course, a huge welcome to our special guest today, Polly Ernest, who's going to be talking to us about her activism and her work with Take Back Democracy. So we are recording this session, and it will hopefully be available on our YouTube channel soon. So if you don't want to be seen on camera, then please do switch your camera off, and maybe just to make things easier, if you could mute yourselves for the meantime as we go forward. And the format of the afternoon is basically we're going to sort of talk, get Polly talking for about 15-20 minutes about her activism, about her work, and then we'll open up for sort of general discussion and any questions. So if you've got any particular questions, maybe you can pop them in the chat and we'll get to them after Polly's had a chance to speak. And if you can just put question in a big in capital letters at the beginning, so it can just pick them out of the chat more easily, that would be great. So big welcome to Polly Ernest from Take Back Democracy. She's been a friend of a lot of us from Bath for Europe for quite a long while, mainly from the Sodem sessions outside of Parliament, where a lot of us have met her in the past. My first encounter with Polly was actually on a visit to Parliament, inside Parliament, for people from all over the country on the Remain campaign, where we had to go inside. We were told we weren't allowed to wear any political clothing, but she actually conspired with me to get a selfie in my Bath for Europe beret. So I've still got that souvenir picture of our first trip into Parliament. It was in the early days when the beret wasn't quite so well known, but it's sort of obviously become a symbol of the campaign now. So we'd love to hear more about your time, Polly, as your experiences as an experienced Remain campaigner, including those many years in the Sodom protests outside Parliament, and also as a regular guest on the Jeremy Vine show on Radio 2, and also your current work through the Take Back Democracy campaign. And particularly we want to talk about the effects on democracy at the moment. So, but before we get going, what I'd really love to know, can you hear me now, by the way, Polly?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
good, excellent.
And I'm so sorry, we had such nightmares, didn't we? So
yeah, we had a few we got there in the end. So.
We did. It just represented activism to me, which is just like, oh my God, what are we doing? And how do we do it? But we will do it, and we will get through. So
there's people waiting, and I'm pressing the wrong buttons. That was basically the way that I was feeling. So I wonder if you could just sort of maybe start off by just telling us how you got involved in the Remain campaign. Were you, like many of us who hadn't been involved in politics beforehand and got incensed by the 2016 referendum, or did you have a longer history? How did you get to where you are at the moment, basically?
Okay, so I'm just going to I'll tell you that I will tell you about that, and I will also tell you that although I was working with Take Back Democracy, and I'm still working with them, I'm not one of the team anymore there, and I'll tell you why in a bit. I got involved. No, I'd always been politically interested, but never politically active. And I think, like most of us, I woke up on the 24th of June, cried. I cried for days and days and days. And I think the days turned into weeks, and I was in a state of deep depression, and I just couldn't believe it. And I hadn't been involved in the Stronger In campaign. I'd put up a poster in my window, and anyone who asked me, I'd said, well, of course you must vote to Remain. But I hadn't done anything. I wasn't out campaigning with the Stronger In campaign. It didn't really ever occur to me that we would lose until much later on. And I still think, and you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you like, but I believe that we were infiltrated and influenced so much earlier than we realise. So although we talk about the fact that there was data harvesting and people on the Leave side were fed lies, I genuinely believe that people on the Remain side, I have no evidence for this, but I genuinely believe that people on the Remain side, we were fed the lies that we were going to win, that we believed that we were going to win, and that we didn't need to get out, and there wasn't really anything we needed to do. So yeah, that's how I got involved. I think there was a march in the September, which I didn't go to, but I can remember Gemma Knowles on Facebook saying that we needed to form local groups. And so I set up Herefordshire for Europe. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I thought I was going to achieve. And there was an inaugural, I think, then in the January, I joined the European movement as a personal membership, because Stephen Dorrell said he was going to stop Brexit, and I thought, oh great, because somebody needs to. And we were told that if we had a meeting, we could get a speaker along to the meeting. So I set up this inaugural Herefordshire for Europe meeting in January 2017. And basically the speaker came along, really nice guy it was called Lawrence, came along and essentially said, well, we've lost, and that's it. And we've got to accept the fact that we've lost. And it's over. I did all of this debating. I did, we've lost. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, nobody's going to do anything. Nobody is going to do anything unless we do something. We have no political representation. And unless we do something, unless we all take personal responsibility for this, nothing is good. That's it. We're just going this, And that's really when I then got involved. I think there was the march, it was supposed to be a Stop Brexit march on the 25th of March, 2017. And I became one of the collaborators with the organising team. I don't know how many people know what went on behind the scenes with that march, but it was horrific. And it was constantly infiltrated, and people tried to sabotage it and stop it, and the message got changed. And really, that's been the story of the Remain movement, sadly, from my experience, since then, is that we just sabotage ourselves. And trust the wrong people, and don't take enough action. We don't take enough action. We keep thinking somebody else. And I don't mean any of the people in this meeting. I don't mean Sally and Jane and all of the other fantastic people who I've met. And like you were talking, Sally, about when we went to Parliament. And that's so strange, because that picture of me, I think that's when the words People's Vote was first ever sort of mooted. And I've got a photograph of me standing in front of a slide with the purple and the green. It popped up on my phone this morning. Weird. And then but I've also got my Stop Brexit t-shirt on, because although I put my jumper on over the top of it, the minute I got in the room, I took my and I was also wearing political clothing. So we colluded, didn't we?
Certainly did, yeah. And so obviously sort of you sort of going off in a different direction I was expecting you to, but I mean, did you see that you were talking about the People's Vote campaign, which was certainly, I mean, even in the press there were articles about how that sort of imploded from inside. But how do you see normal people needing to get how can we as sort of normal activists get this thing back on track, and how do you see that democracy itself is being eroded at the moment?
Okay, so I think that we have to take 100% personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. That, to me, that's it. Okay, don't wait for somebody else to tell you what to do. You literally if we take personal responsibility, we have a chance. We have a chance of doing something, and we still have a right. Protest is a right. It's a fundamental human right, and you don't have to ask permission to protest. I think this is really important. I think this is where people get very confused. And you need permission to march, but you do not need permission to protest. And everybody can take a stand. And it's working out, it's finding a group of people who you can work with and it might be one, and you might go and do something, and you might find that other people join you, or they may not. But it's about taking a stand. It's about saying, I'm going to go and stand on a bridge and fly a flag. I'm going to go and unthreateningly stand outside my MP's office. You know, I mean, obviously with MPs, it's really difficult at the moment because of 2 MPs having been murdered. But I think it's really important that we understand that we must carry on doing things. We must carry on taking a stand, making a stand, and protesting while we can, because this government is hell-bent on taking away our right to protest.
Well, that brings me on to the sort of the main sort of thrust of our sort of conversation is the police crime sentencing and courts bill, but what we kind of feel sorry, excuse me, is like the kill the bill sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that particular bill and how it's progressing at the moment through the...
Well, I think it's really scary, personally, really frightening. And the fact that all of the amendments were put in after it had been through, most of the amendments were put in after it went through Parliament, and then it went to the Lords, and they threw out those amendments. And then it's gone back through the Houses of Parliament. And essentially, obviously, that's really targeted at Extinction Rebellion and at Steve Bray. You know, let's be honest about it, noisy protest and big, uncomfortable, difficult protest. So I think there's 2 weeks of Extinction Rebellion action coming up on from the 9th of April. And there's quite a bit of it that might make quite a lot of us feel uncomfortable, because I think they're talking about blockading fuel stations and various other things. However, I think we need to understand that we need to join up with them, because we will lose our right to protest. We won't be able to just be able to do things. So as I said, at the moment, we can, as each individual person, we can stand up and we can say whatever we want. I mean, protest is this cornerstone of democracy. If we don't have protest, we lose democracy. It's as simple as that, because if you can't, if the only participation that you have in democracy is a vote once every 4 or 5 years, and who knows what's going to happen, and boundary changes and whatever else. If that's your only participation in democracy, that isn't democracy. So this right to dissent, this right to disagree, is incredibly important. So I think we have to keep, wherever we can, in whatever, I mean, obviously in Bath, you have an MP who you agree with. I mean,
we're surrounded by a donut of Jacob Rees-Mogg. So
yes,
various people on this call who actually live in Jacob Rees-Mogg's constituency.
Okay, yeah, well, and it's really funny for me, because I always lived in Tory constituencies, so it was really easy to know what to do. And I now live in a Plaid Cymru constituency, where I agree 100% with everything that my MP does. And if I write to him, I don't even need to write to him, because he'll have already done it, or he'll have already initiated what it is that needs to be done, because he's a thoroughly decent man. I'm not very far away from some Welsh conservative constituencies as well. So yeah, I just think that we have to keep making our voices heard. We have to keep saying, not in my name. We have to keep saying, you know, I will support all forms of protest, even if I don't agree with them. So it's like with the anti-vaxxers. I want nothing to do with the anti-vax protest, but I still believe they have a right to protest if that's what they believe in.
Absolutely.
And you know, and what really concerns me is that if we lose our right to peaceful protest, there is only one way to go. So if we're going to get 10 years for protesting peacefully, we may as well protest violently. I'm not advocating that at all. That's the danger of where this bill takes us. And the irony that it is the House of Lords that is protecting us is not lost on me. So
what do you think it would take to get the average person who doesn't really know too much about this current bill and isn't too bothered and thinks that the government won't actually bother to use its powers? What do you think it would take to actually get them out on the streets or get them sort of writing to MPs and things like that? Why is there so much apathy out there?
Well, where to start? Uh, people just don't know, do they? People just, even if they do know. So in my normal friendship groups, oh, don't make a fuss, Polly, don't use the F word, don't talk about fascism, oh, stop overreacting. That's most people. I mean, obviously we have lots of different scenarios. One is that so many people are just working so hard just to keep a roof over their heads, just to get their kids through school. We've obviously had this, we've also got a huge issue with COVID. So at the moment, I can't protest with other people because my husband's clinically extremely vulnerable. I mean, I've hardly been out for 2 years. So all I can do is encourage other people. So at the moment, I feel that I'm part of the problem because it's almost impossible for me to do anything. And yeah, exactly. I mean, somebody's just said the press doesn't help. The press does more than not help. We have a press who isn't telling us what's going on. I think, I don't know. Okay, so this is my personal take on this. But when I started to protest against Brexit, I had no great love for the EU. Okay, that wasn't what I was protesting about. I really liked freedom of movement. I lived in France for 5 years because I could. I thought it was a fantastic institution, but I would never have said, "Oh, I love the EU." It was just a sort of body over there, wasn't it, that allowed us freedoms. But my principal fight was always about what Brexit meant. Once I went through that process of saying, okay, where are the benefits of Brexit? Let's look and see. Let's try and find some positives and I'll see what I can get behind. I'm realizing there was nothing. It was anti-immigration and it was about taking back control so that authoritarian government could have power over us. And that's all it was. And now that's exactly what it's playing out to be. So my idea at the moment, and I don't quite know how we go about it, because it's what people don't want to be told I told you so, do they? That's just, so I'm trying to get behind this. The thing I'm trying to get behind at the moment is this idea of asking people to join the dots. So if we can give people snippets of information that they can then, sorry, my cat, we give people snippets of information and allow them and another snippet of information. So I think this is particularly the case this week with what's in the Times today about Lebedev and Johnson, and making people, so we could walk around with placards. I mean, how many times I walk around with placard with Putin's face on it? Putin loves Brexit. Oh, don't be silly. Why would Russia this, that, and the other? So I think we have to find a way, and I don't know what it is at the moment. We have to find a way to allow people to realize for themselves what has happened and never say, well, I told you so, because all that will do is entrench them in that view. So we have to allow people to, sorry about my cat, we have to allow people to make mistakes. We have to, and so I think often that means, from our point of view, we also have to say, well, I was wrong about that. So, because if we can say we were wrong about something, then maybe that gives other people the opportunity to say, oh, well, I was wrong about this. Or, so I think one of the most unhelpful things that ever, happened is when people were angry with the Remain and Now movement. I thought the Remain and Now movement was the most amazing political activist idea for people to come forward and say, I got it wrong, I got it wrong. And I think that's all that we can hope for now, is that this call is being taken over by my cat now. My cat, who never talks to me normally. So I think that's the best we can do, is that when somebody says to us, and amongst our friend groups or wherever else, I realise I made a mistake, or I didn't think Brexit would be like this, that's the point at which I think we need to really encourage those people to write to their MP.
Absolutely.
That's the way to do it. Is we cannot expect them to come and man the barricades with us. But if somebody expresses an inch of doubt, to allow them to tell them, most people don't even know how to write to their MP. Most people have no idea how to do it. So to say to them, have you heard about Write for Them? Do you know how to do this? Would you like me to help you? Oh no, I don't want to make a fuss.
Or it won't make a difference. People just think it's not going to make enough difference, but they don't realise just how much, if enough people are actually hitting an MP with the same questions, it is actually going to make them start.
And obviously, if our aim ultimately is to get back in the EU, which we do all desperately want, but the only way that is ever going to be possible is to get rid of this current government. Yeah. We have to get the Jacob Rees-Moggs and the Liam Foxes and the Steve Bakers and the Dominic Raabs. We have to get them out of office.
We'll definitely be campaigning locally here to get rid of Jacob anyway.
Yes.
Tried last time, but it didn't work. Oh, I'm getting a clap from Anna there. That's great. Before we move on to sort of just opening it to general chit chat, do you want to just talk to a little bit about what you're doing with Take Back Democracy? You said that things have slightly changed there, and also what your current sort of activism is, and then there's a whole lot of chat that I've been ignoring because I didn't want to miss out on what you were saying, and we can go back and look at the questions, and
that's fine. Yeah,
a bit more definitely. Generally.
Okay, so really, Take Back Democracy came out of, I think everybody probably saw all the Johnson Out stuff on Twitter. Really good hashtags, but essentially we cannot change this government on Twitter. That will not happen. So really, Take Back Democracy came about as an idea. A few old muckers just wanted to shame some other people into taking some action. We couldn't believe that nobody was doing anything. And I still find it really hard that people, the big organisations, aren't doing more. And I still don't understand why, that they aren't doing more. So that's what Take Back. It was a one-off, from my point of view. It was a one-off demo to get people out, and unfortunately the weather conspired to make it not as successful as it should have been. But it was really just that idea of saying to people, what was amazing was the number of people who got involved who'd never been to a protest before. So although it wasn't very large, and most of the organising group were not involved, had never been to a single Remain rally. They'd never been to, so there were 3 of us who had been. And there was a group of, I think there were 10 of us. So once we'd set that up, people in the group wanted to organise another march, and I think they've got another one happening in April. But the 3 of us who sort of were the catalyst for it just said, well, we actually don't want to organise another march. What we want to do, my aim now, is to try and join people up. So, and to try and join people up, and for people to work in really quite small cells, interconnected cells. And the reason for saying about interconnected cells is my experience over however many years, 5 years of activism, is the minute you get, without being rude, but you get a committee, or you get lots of people, or you need to take a vote on anything that you're doing, you get disagreement and people start arguing, and then nothing happens. And all of this energy gets wasted on trying to get people to agree to something that they fundamentally don't agree with. So what I really would like to encourage people to do is to work in small local cells that are all interconnected, but where there's no hierarchy, and where you might have a revolving. So I'm not talking about big organisations here. I'm not suggesting that Bath for EU changes its structure, but I'm talking about finding just like-minded people who want to do something with you. And then other people, and that could be, as I said, that could be going and standing opposite Jacob Rees-Mogg's office with a banner that says something.
Oh yes, we've been there.
Yeah, totally unthreatening, very polite, but you know that we're here, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But not everybody having to agree on the same action, and sometimes then lots of people will turn up, and on other occasions not very many people will come, but it doesn't matter because you're still taking action. And then what I really wanted to do was to try and get all of the different groups, everybody who opposes the Tories, who isn't a fascist and who isn't an anti-vaxxer, but to try and actually work together, to attend each other's activity, so to get us out of our silos, which is why I'm saying let's go to XR things, okay? Kill the bill, all these different things, make votes matter. We've got all of these things happening in silos, and we need to be coming together. And I think that was where what are they called, the People's Assembly, all of these anti-austerity, and we all need to be working together. And it's really hard. It's really, really hard because everybody's got a different agenda. So sometimes we just have to go along to other people's protests. We can take our own banner with us, but we just need to turn up, or we just need to support them.
That's really great to hear, actually. And I mean, that has been happening to a certain extent in Bath. We've had the Bath welcomes refugees. We've been along to support, or some of us have been along to support. Make Votes Matter has got a bit of a crossover, has had a crossover here locally. There were a lot of people at the Ukraine
vigils,
last week from Bath Europe as well. So it is starting to happen, but I think it's interesting that it feels like it kind of needs almost more of a sort of formal sort of type of structure in there, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, we need I don't know if you remember very early on in the Remain, we had coordination hubs which were supposed to bring all the Remain groups together, and they didn't. But we do, I really think that's what we need to be doing, and not even necessarily agreeing, but just knowing. So what I'm involved in now, okay, so very small. So the four of us who had already been involved in demonstration, not left, but we just said to the 7, okay, that you want to get an organisation and a structure going, and that's not really our thing, but we'll support whatever you do. But what I want to do is go off and find every bit of anti-government activity that's going on and encourage people to take part, even if it's not necessarily the message that is burning in my heart. So we're now, we just called ourselves, we've got a Twitter account and an Eventbrite. I think this is not democracy, because I just keep looking at everything and thinking this just isn't democracy, and trying to get people to join the dots. So that's this real thing, and that join the dots works in so many different ways, because it works in the way of join the dots, i.e. work out what's actually going on. But we can also, I really want us to join the dots between organisations and join the dots between each other, because we can't all like each other. It just doesn't work like that. But we just need to find like-minded people who we have a spark with, who we can work with and support. So yeah, I think that's about it. I'm afraid my daughter's come crashing in. I'm not looking at, she's asking me about roast dinner. She can just wait about roast dinner, so that's fine.
we've got lots of questions in the chat, and I've been concentrating more on you than looking at the chat. But I see a recent one we got from Anna Berrier wants to talk about Compass. Do you want to unmute yourself and quickly talk about that, Anna?
Just to encourage everybody who's listening to Polly and would like to join local small cells, as she's saying, and work together, and not necessarily with people that were in Bath for Europe or in your whatever locals for Europe, but people who simply want change and they're prepared to stick out for it. Join Compass, work with your local activist, whether it doesn't matter which party they're in, as long as it's a progressive party, or call it whatever you like. The first step is to get this government out. So Compass is the way forward, as far as I can see, if you want to be part of a nationwide movement towards that aim. Compass.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Polly, at all?
No, just completely in agreement.
Yeah.
Completely in agreement. As I said, just but the minute you feel as though any organisation you're with is spending more time debating which biscuits you should be having at the meeting, leave, get out. Honestly, biscuits aren't important. Says a woman who protested with cake for the best part of 3 years. So.
And actually, that is one of the things that I do love about Bath for Europe, is that we have got relatively low hierarchy, and it's literally just who wants to do this job and off we go and do it, sort of thing. So Jane's got her hand up. So Jane, would you like to chip in?
Yes, actually, following on from what Sally was saying about, and actually what you were saying, Polly, about sort of basically getting involved in different sort of protests in different areas. I've been to all those protests that Sally was talking about, too, about government legislation, and then more recently about Ukraine. And that was actually, they're all about the loss of democracy. They all come under that sort of banner. Going back to the government things, and I've written some stuff for West England Bylines, and also there's stuff on our website I put up, so if anybody wants to have a look, there's more information there. I'm actually wondering, going back to the government legislation things, because a lot of, exactly as you said, a lot of the amendments were introduced without discussion, defeated by the laws, so would actually need new bills to become law. Do you actually think now that the government, because of what's going on in Ukraine, will be in the process of, they're going to want to enact new laws? Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think that the current situation might sort of put all that on hold? And if so, this is the time then that we really need to make our voices known about these amendments, because also under the elections bill, democracy is definitely being compromised, because the accountability of the Electoral Commission, that was one of the amendments that was actually going to be called into question. Do you think this is these things could be put on hold? I don't know. What do you reckon?
I don't know. I don't think this government will put anything on hold. I think this government will use absolutely this time to stuff as much through as they possibly can. I mean, I think what we probably need to do is we need to find our lords again, don't we, and go back and lobby our lords, because presumably this will just be ping pong. Because it went, the bill went through Parliament. I mean, there are 3 horrific bills happening at the same time, aren't there? There's the electoral bill, there's the policing bill, and there's the
Nationality and
Borders Bill. I mean, which is just, I mean, they're horrific. I can't sort of really underestimate. And again, we have people saying, oh, look what how awful Putin is, and I think you only get 5 years in prison for protesting in Russia. They're planning 10 years here. So no, these are seriously draconian. I would imagine that they're the sort of bills that, we don't know how much of a Russian asset Johnson is, do we? It's all over the papers today, it's everywhere. But I mean, this is not a government who would want protest. This is not a government who want dissent. These are not So, and they've got a massive majority. I think we need to be really, really afraid of them. I don't want to underestimate that. We've had COVID. It's caught us on the back foot because of that. But they've got a massive majority, and the only thing that we have at the moment is our voices and our activism. We don't have. I don't see how lobbying MPs is going to do very much, because most of them don't seem to have a conscience. So I'm really concerned that lobbying, I mean, obviously, yes, I mean, I have to just say something about your MP, because she's just brilliant. And actually, she stood next to me outside the House of Parliament at our protest, shouting bollocks to Brexit at the House of Commons. I've stood alongside Vera, and that to me that's somebody who really understands democracy and understands. So I think again, I know she was really involved in Bath for EU.
She was a founding member.
She was the founder, wasn't she?
She came into politics as an activist.
Yes, exactly. And so I was going to say, I think it'd be really worthwhile talking to Vera, because because she must have some ideas as well. The other thing as well is it's about Conservative associations, isn't it? I think a lot of the MPs are only the mouthpieces for their Conservative association. So if anybody can bear to, we probably need to infiltrate Conservative associations. But I mean, it's such a repulsive thought, or influence, or somehow write to the chair. There must be now Conservative associations who are horrified at being at the involvement, of Partygate and the corruption that's going on. So if we could write to the chairs of our Conservative associations, I think that could be a real, to say, is this really what you want to represent? Is this really where you're going?
Can I just come in very quickly, and then I will shut up. Going on to your thing about talking to Conservative associations, they actually interviewed members of Beaconsfield, where Dominic Grieve was, their Conservative association, during Partygate, and they would definitely, they voted in Joy
Morrissey, the American.
Joy Morrissey, yes. That's right. And they were definitely suffering from buyer's remorse. So it might be a thought. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Thank you, Polly.
No, don't shut up, because I think it's really important, because I'm much better at thinking in a conversation than in a silo. So
I think Jane said she's going.
I meant shut up now.
No, but that's what I mean. But that's what I'm just saying, because I think that there are some really good ideas that we do need to bounce backwards and forwards. And you're absolutely right about Beaconsfield and other Conservative associations. Maybe the ones where they had good MPs, David Gawkes, those sort of One Nation Tories, who would be appalled. But even in Somerset, I don't think very many dyed-in-the-wool Somerset blue voters would feel comfortable about the level of Russian interference in our politics. I really don't. Or the partying. I mean, I think particularly in the southwest. I mean, I was in Herefordshire, so not dissimilar, where people are conservative because they're conservative, because they want to keep things as they are, and they believe that's what the voting Tory will do for them. So
Conservative is a small C certainly around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris Hammond, you've got your hand up for a while. Do you want to unmute and have a quick question?
Hello, yes, thanks very much, Polly, for a very interesting talk. I think the numerous ideas we can get from everywhere are very valid and contribute towards our pool of thoughts and ideas. I did put a question in 2 weeks ago. We had a stand in solidarity with Ukraine. We had a Russian lady come along, and I was with her yesterday on the high street, and we were she's supporting or trying to get support for independent media in Russia. So tying up with that stream of thought, and that sort of person is fine. We've also got a Canterbury for Europe group, which is beginning to start up soon. So my question was, how do you feel about all the campaigning pro-EU with all that's going on in Ukraine? I've also got a comment to make about the 7th of May march, but that question first.
How do I feel about, for me, I personally, I've put away my pro-EU campaigning. It's pointless. If we don't get the Tories out, we will never, ever get back into the EU or join the single market or anything else. So for me, the focus is on making people realise just how bad voting Tory is for them, how bad it is for their health, how bad it is for their wealth, how bad it is for everything. And unfortunately, you know, I have got, you know, European stamped across my heart, but I know that it can put people off. It can put people off. You're a moaners, you lost. So for me personally, I've had to put that down. And one thing I really wanted to do after the election, where I'd already stood down as leader of the Herefordshire for Europe group, but at that point, what I really wanted to do is I really wanted it to be us to be seen using the money that we had accumulated. It wasn't very much, but I wanted it to go to homeless charities. I wanted us to be seen as very publicly as the good guys. So, you know, yeah, you can put on your EU t-shirt, but go out and pick litter up, or go out and help the homeless, or whatever else. And we, you know, it's too easy for us to be very middle class, comfortably off, and, you know, just calling out for what we lost. And I think we have to inhabit a place where people go, they're really decent people, those lot who like the EU. They actually look at them helping with people who are in difficult circumstances, not just, you know, and I'm not saying that we all campaigned so hard because we knew that Brexit would damage the country and damage the poorest and all of those things, but I'm not sure we always got that message across. So yeah, that's my feeling. Is I'm unfortunately, I'd say take off our Bath berets for now and keep them in our pockets. But I just think the message has got to be the Tories are corrupt, the Conservatives are bad for our health, the Conservatives are bad people, and we need decent people in politics. We need Veras. We need, you know, we need real people who actually care about people, who actually think £84,000 a year is a decent sum of money to earn and would be very happy to earn it and don't need 3 or 4 other jobs.
Thanks for that, Polly. We've got a couple more people with their hands up who've had their hands up. I'll get to you in a minute, Phil, but Simon, you had your hand up just now. Simon, you still there? Or is he frozen? You need to unmute yourself.
No, I'm just listening. Thank you.
You had your hand up just now, I think. Or did you just raise your hand anyway? Did you want to ask a question, Simon? I'm guessing not. No.
Do you mean me?
Yes, yeah. We thought you had your hand up just now. And you're muted still. Hang on. We're not hearing you.
I think he said he didn't want to. I think he said he was just listening.
But we'll move on to Phil then. Phil Jones, you've got your hand up at the moment.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, Phil. Hello.
Hi, Polly.
Hi. Oh, you're one of my inspirations. You're one of my utter inspirations, Phil, on Roundabout Phil.
Well, that's nice of you. So have you actually encountered examples in real life of somebody who's really sympathetic to everything you were saying, and Conservative policies are really damaging in loads of different ways? Oh, yes, I think I'll vote Labour. I think I'll vote Green. I think I'll vote Liberal Democrat because of all these bad things. And then you mention, oh, and I love the European Union. And they go, oh, no, forget it then. I'm going to stick. I've done going to stick with what.
Not
what
at all. Not at all. And that's why I'm saying keep our hats in our pockets. So, I mean, so I've got a holiday let, and in my holiday let, there's an EU flag. There's a little one. It's just a little one. And people often say to me, oh, I like your flag. And, you know, and so, and I still wear my badges. I haven't got one on today, but I do still wear badges. But it's just, it's just not being so in your face. Whereas I used to always have a t-shirt on, for example. And I realized at the end of however many years, I needed that I didn't have any clothes that didn't have slogans on them.
Really?
So yeah, I mean, no, I haven't. I think sometimes if you're talking to people who are really quite left wing, that's where you can run into that problem more so than anywhere else. Of, oh yeah, but the EU was this, that, and the other, wasn't it? You know, and we'll never get a consensus. We'll never get everybody to come along, but it's just about getting the Tories out, and I think that's the really important message, because once we've got the Tories out, we can do the other stuff.
And here's a bit of feedback for you. I met somebody who astonished me when she said that she was anti-EU and mentioned immigration. And I discovered, after questioning her patiently, that the good question to ask was, when did the problem start? Because it turned out that she wasn't against immigration altogether, like immigration in the 1950s to do with the Commonwealth, you know, Windrush to help rebuild after the war. That was fine, she said. That means that immigration, because of the European communities joining in 1973, that was fine. When did the problem start? She said it started in 2004 when 10 new countries joined all at the same time. And of course, I had to point out to her that there were transitional controls at the time that the UK didn't use, because it was understood and recognised that a sudden movement of people could be dislocated. So I had to point out to her that the very thing that you've asked for is the thing that the European Commission proposed, and countries agreed to it. The one place in Europe where that wasn't done was the UK.
You know why, don't you, Phil? You know?
So actually, she wasn't as extreme as I first thought. And I only discovered that when I realized that the good question to ask about, okay, so you're concerned about immigration. Well, I'm concerned about that as well. You want a well-run country. Okay, I also care about that. The key question was, when did the problem start?
Yeah.
Interesting perspective, how people, well, you know, just asking those open questions can make such a big difference, I think, as well, can't it? Just to try and get into the mind of people. Linda's got a question. Do you want to unmute yourself, Linda? Is that good?
Yes, I'm wondering, you know, our need to get rid of this government, whether the fact that there's now a war in Europe, whether that will in fact cause people to sort of dig in and think, oh well, we'll just stick with what we've got because there's a danger of conflict.
Yes, I think that's really concerning, and I think that's why we have to keep asking, where's the police report? Where's the Sue Gray report? We've got to. There was a really. I don't know if everybody subscribes or Byline Times, but the stuff in Byline today about Medvedev and the links to Johnson, and Medvedev's links to Putin. So while we've got a lot of anti-Putin sentiment in the country, it is essential, I think, to put Putin and Johnson in the same, you know, to let people join the dots, to let people link up that actually what we have in this country is a government that is in the pay of Putin. And yeah, because that's the danger. That's why a government in trouble likes a war, isn't it? You know, that's like Thatcher liked a war, or whatever else, because it makes people scared and it makes people think, oh, we need to all. So I think now it's absolutely critical, and I don't know how we do it, but I've talked to, you know, activist friends, and we have agreed that that is what that really, really needs to be done, is to get the message out about the links between Russia and the Conservative Party. And the links at very, very, very high level. And it's nothing to do with being Russia-phobic. It's nothing to do, Russophobic, I think is what Johnson accused us of being. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with being Putinophobic and everything to do with being anti-authoritarian. And yeah, I think, so in any conversations that we have with people, that's, you know, that's what we need to be getting across. That
Putin has got a major hold over Johnson, don't you? There's something there in the background that's
absolutely, and it's not just Johnson, is it? Because that's the other thing, is I think we have to be really careful. Is yes, we have to get Johnson out, but it's not enough to just get Johnson out. We've really, really, really got to mobilise. We're going to have such a mass. We really are going to have a really big swing at the next election, because they're going to change the boundaries. Lots of people are going to be disenfranchised. Oh, the other thing I would say, I really, really mean this, and again, is make sure people vote in person rather than postal voting. I don't trust postal voting. Obviously, if you have to postal vote, then do postal vote. But in general, it's better to take yourself to the ballot box and put it in yourself. And I say that because I used to run a promotional marketing company in Ludlow. And one day I received in the post about 30. I had about 30 postal votes came to me, delivered to the wrong address. And I had to work really hard to get them back to the returning officer, to the right place.
That's incredible, actually.
Yeah, I think if you Google me, it's from about 2000. It's from about 2003. Wow. And yeah, and so if we can avoid postal voting, I think that's a really good thing to do.
A lot of us
make the effort.
A lot of us who campaign locally with the local party for Vera are actually encouraging postal votes to get them in early and just people, you know, just because it is easy and, you know, can't be bothered on the day and things like that. So
it's much better. I think it's much better to do proxy. It's much better if you. I mean, I agree in principle that we should be able to. Yeah. But obviously, iDocs is owned by Peter Lilly, who I had the misfortune of sitting next to in the Jeremy Vine studio. And he just exudes evil. That's all I can say about him. So I understand postal voting for students, or if you can't be bothered, but if you think you can, if you think you can be bothered, you're much better off getting somebody you trust to be a proxy.
Okay, we've got a couple of people who have got their hands up electronically. I'm not sure if Chris is doing it. You've left it up there, have you, from last time?
It's just to make 2 more points.
Okay, you're doing. Yeah.
Far away, right. On the issue of talking to MPs, one of our committee visits her MP and gets invited to things. She's going to be arranging, it was in the last committee meeting, she's arranging that the committee go out for a meal with Damien Collins in Folkestone, etc., etc. So we want to make, we obviously don't want to be antagonistic, but we do want to wheedle out his views on things. I believe he voted Remain. That's the first point. The second point, the 7th of May, the march, Grassroots for Europe had a meeting with Peter Core 2 Wednesdays ago. He explained everything, and the Richard Wilson, chair of Grassroots, well, no longer, but vice chair of the European movement, and Yvonne and a few others had a chat with him. He hasn't got a bank account yet. He hadn't found out whether there were any clashes, and in fact the GLA have got a clash or a meeting or something going on the 7th of May. So he's postponed it till the 14th, but he's still got, he's principally a one-man band. He has no experience of organizing marches, and the suggestion is, and they're going to heavily weigh on his shoulders to suggest that he postpones it for quite some time. Besides, the idea of rejoin at the moment is, as you know, as people have been saying here, not really the thing we should be going for. So those are my 2 points. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Phil, do you want to unmute as well? You've got your hand up again.
Yeah. I am. You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my hope is that most people do believe that they are in one of the better countries in the world and wish to believe that they are in a country that generally acts honourably and generally keeps its promises, which is why I was particularly amazed today when I saw, Ursula von der Leyen says that they've activated the temporary protection directive for the first time ever in the EU's history because of the Ukraine crisis, refugee crisis. Well, I checked it out. It goes back to year 2000, and it says that the temporary protection directive is about a sudden influx on a large scale of refugees because of some crisis in a nearby country and spreading the load amongst the member countries so that it's fair. And at that time, the UK confirmed in a letter in the year 2000 that it wanted to take part. And also at the same time, Denmark opted out, said it didn't want to take part. Now, the directive is being used for the first time in the EU's history. The UK is the one that has abandoned its promises, that is neglecting its neighbours, not pulling its weight, not taking a fair share, not doing its effort, not making an honourable effort, while the Danish have changed their minds and they've welcoming. The Danish are the ones doing the things that people expected the UK to be doing.
We're not an honourable country
ago, the
anymore.
UK promised that it would do. And my hope is that if you tell people that you can prove in black and white that your country is acting dishonourably, is breaking its promises. That is not what people expect to hear that their country is doing. I hope. I could be wrong.
Good comment. Very interesting thought. So, has anybody else got a comment or question? Simon, you've got your hand up. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, it's a very clever question. It's where did it all start? Well, I've been thinking a lot about that, and it was done by a journalist working for the Telegraph and the Daily Express. That's a huge bunch of people telling a whole load of lies and going on doing it because it's fun doing that, and it produces different sort of more sales to the press and so on. And hey presto, what have we got at the moment in Russia? And suddenly the connection between Boris Johnson and Putin is suddenly very clear to me. I'm stunned. Thank you very much for that question.
Thanks. Caroline.
How to complete it, how to deal with it is a very difficult problem, I find, unless the press, unless information can be got to the general public, which is the same in Russia. The information has to be got to the general public. And the Russians are leaving at some speed these days, and they will, when they wake up, when our population wakes up, and when Russia's population wakes up, then things will change. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Good. Caroline, you've got your hand up. Anything to add?
Yes, I believe that the Liberal Democrats have actually agreed to change their policy on Europe and to aim for membership of the single market as a possible or probable step to a long-term aim of rejoining. Should we be campaigning for rejoining the single market, because businesses are being crucified, and everyone's kind of been told that the Conservatives are the party of business, and despite Boris's F business comment, the reality is we're all going to really be struggling in the next couple of years because of this war, and also the gas situation. Should that be one of our sort of issues that we should be campaigning on?
Ollie?
Yes, undoubtedly, and it will be very interesting for me. I mean, I think that was definitely I'm involved in Plaid. That was definitely Plaid's position, that we need to be in the single market, and obviously we need to get Labour to move to that point. So again, it's that same thing about making sure, they're still talking about we've got to make Brexit work. So again, Labour are in, they're in fear, aren't they, of the red wall that is or isn't there, or anything else. So again, I think it's this thing about, let's call it something other than the single market. If calling it the single market causes problems, then let's call it, trading with Europe on an equal, on an equal footing, or whatever it is. Certainly, I mean, again, but it's always the same thing. And the difficulty that we have, isn't it, is getting messages across. Okay. So we know, for example, I mean, Simon was just saying about the links between Johnson and Putin. It's the same thing about people who say, oh yes, but the Conservatives are the party of business. And what we have to have is we have to have facts that prove to people that that's not true. So I still think that where we can be the most influential is within our friend and family groups. That's still where, if you think about it, bottom line, when it comes back to normally, who do I really trust, or who can I really feel that I get my information from? Those really personal connections. So even if we all go back to my little thoughts of groups of 10 people, if you can persuade 10 friends, or tell, and the really difficult thing is, I think for a lot of us, we probably separated ourselves from people who we really disagreed with after the referendum. I certainly did. I found it impossible to speak to my godmother, for example, because she'd voted to leave, and it's taken me a really long time to sort of come back round to being able to have a loving relationship with her, because she was so wrong. But I think that's what we've got to do. We've actually got to start reaching out to the people who we know were wrong, and without telling them that they were wrong, but let them tell us. And then let's give, I mean, and the other problem is, my sister keeps saying to me at the moment, oh, they're all as bad as each other. They're all wouldn't be any better. It wouldn't be any better if Labour were in power. We have to put an end to that. We have to say to people, come on, we've got to, we need a progressive alliance, or we need a coalition, or whatever it is that we need. We need to change the way that that our voting system works. So I think the single biggest thing all of us can do is hearts and minds. Don't try and change the way the whole country feels. Try and change the way 10 people who you're close to, who have a different opinion from you, without having an argument. Try and give them the space to tell you that they'd like things to be different, and then allow you to make some suggestions about how that might be possible.
There's always that difference between the hard levers and the soft levers, isn't there? There's a few that you're never going to get to.
Oh, yes, a few you never get, absolutely. Yeah. And and the absolute raving ERG type Conservatives. Yeah, I mean, there's no point. There's literally no point. There's no point even don't get involved in those arguments. Don't even go there. But I'm talking about people who you actually really love and like, but who are just a little bit wrong. Yeah. And now's your perfect opportunity to just make sure you've got that Times, the Sunday Times today, what's his name? Gabriel Pogren's article today. Make sure that you've got it, so you can say, do you know how linked Johnson and Putin are? Yeah. Just have some little snippets.
Yeah, and the whole corruption thing as well.
Yeah, and don't forget the corruption, and don't forget Partygate, and don't forget the PPE, and don't forget any of them.
Yeah, and let the body pile high and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
and let the bodies and everything else. So, yeah.
It's interesting what Caroline was saying just now about sort of rejoining and baby steps. I think you're right. You know, get the single market first, whatever. There's been some discussion in the chat about sort of Labour. Does anybody want to sort of come in on sort of Keir Starmer and what do we think that Labour should be doing, or without wanting to get too party political about it? I know nobody wants to. Yeah, go for it, Caroline.
Hi. Somebody I know is married to the guy Matthew Pennycook, who's an MP for Greenwich, and he was Keir Starmer's right-hand man during the whole Brexit thing. And I am utterly convinced that Keir Starmer is an out-and-out Remainer. But I think he's also a strategic thinker as well. And I think he doesn't want to put his cards on the table now only to, be called, called out by the Tories and what have you. And I think I'm pretty confident that we will have a change of government, because even, people like Patience Wheatcroft and what have you saying, well, I think we'll have a change of government, and, real, hacks that know, have seen things over the years are realising just how disliked this government is. I think that it will just be one thing at a time. I don't think he would want to make things more difficult now than necessary. So, I'm Lib Dem, but I've got a lot of friends that are, Labour supporters, and nearly every local constituency that I'm aware of, the majority, well, they've gone for PR. They really want PR within, they're pushing for it. So I think that's a, definite now. And I think that, most of them wanted, apart from the extreme left, which in my area have all blooming, torn up the cards anyway, wanted to be in the European Union. So I'm fairly hopeful, to be honest.
Anybody else got any comments that they want to join in with? Yeah, go for it, Phil.
Yeah, about they're all the same. Well, they are not, because our local hero in Wickham, one of them is Tony Brodell, who stands for the Liberal Democrats, and she said to our Lib Dem members when COVID started, she said, when this is all over, I'm going to have the loveliest garden party possible. And what the heck, she did not say, oh, well, let's just go ahead and have it anyway. Like, what the heck? Absolutely.
I'm not suggesting, Phil, that they are all the same, but I think that's a very convenient, and that's a line that is being fed in from the James Melville and all of that lot, the people who jumped ship, who the leavers who've now become anti-net zero. They move in a tribe. They move in tribes. Those people, and that's the one that that can be fed. Oh, they're all the same. They're all politicians. They're all as bad as each other. They all lie. And I think that's one we have to, just like you've done just now, that's the one we have to call out. We really, really have to call that out. And say, no, they're not all the same, because there you are. There's an example of it. Or look at the wonderful MP for Tooting, who's out. I can't remember her name, Dr. Rosanna Ali Khan. She's out in the Ukraine. They're not all the same. They are absolutely not all the same.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. I mean, all politicians are all inclined to present the best possible case, to emphasize the good things and avoid talking about what you'd rather not talk about, minimize the downsides. Well, that's natural. And that's politics, isn't it? That's normal. But You know, some of the stuff that Conservatives have been doing is just out of this world. And I can't imagine that Keir Starmer would behave in that way.
Ian, you got your hand up?
Okay, I'll say something. I mean, it's just so much that possibly could be said about all of this. I mean, well, as a Labour Party member, I suppose I should say something about Keir Starmer. I mean, I think he's, it is really, really difficult. I think he could be a little bit more subtle with his language. He's pissing off quite a lot of people from different sections. You know, from the sort of Corbyn section and from the pro-EU section, and I think he could be a little bit more subtle about what his language. And I kind of am slightly concerned that although he's a highly experienced lawyer, that's not the same as a politician. And he's only been an MP, I think, since 2015. I think he's getting better. And I know people are just saying he's a waste of space, and you know, but I'm not sure that there is that much of an alternative. We don't want to get into another leadership battle, and who else is going to? David Lammy, well, yeah, great, but I mean, he's got to re-establish him. A new leader would have to establish themselves, and you know, a whole thing, and probably lose support for a while. And I don't think it's, you know, it's only what, 2 years to the next election at the most, assuming we're not going to have a December election like last time. So. And I think also, I mean, I did mention in the chat that Keir Starmer, as far as I understand, I mean, they are working under the radar a bit with the not opposition party, you know, Lib Dems and Greens, to try to cooperate in some areas. It's really difficult though here, I mean, particularly here in Northeast Somerset, you know, with Jacob Rees-Mogg, because you know, it's a very divided constituency. Part of it, to the south of Bath, near where I live, is more traditional Labour. Another part, further away towards the west, or maybe even some areas around Bath, are more kind of Conservative. And there's no obvious, you know, sort of alternative other than, you know, there's no obvious single party that's going to do well against, that's going to get all the, you know, opposition to Jacob Rees-Mogg. Yeah, okay, I'll just stop there. Could blow on for a long while.
Thanks, Ian. Have we got any more questions? Anybody who Beth, you got your hand up there?
Yeah, I'd just like to say something regarding demonstrating. I'm with Open Britain Reading, and we collaborate with Berkshire for Europe. And, you know, for a few years now, we've tried everything to get into the papers, you know, the different things that we do. We're several different, we go to Reading Festival and Bastille Day and different events, but we've been successful, and I think if anyone is interested, you can be too, by doing a photograph, which you don't need that many people to do. We've protested, now we've done the elections bill and we did the police bill, and we do a sort of little scene so that it catches people's eye. And then we have people with placards behind us. And then for the first one, we wrote the accompanying article and provided the photos. And fortunately, that was the one at Reading Minster that Steve Bray came to. So it was when Farage came to Reading Minster to speak, we were there to greet him. And it got national press because it was recorded. So we were heard, around the nation, particularly Steve, who's very, very good, as you know, at getting himself heard. And we provided, we being Open Britain and Berkshire for Europe, photos that we took ourselves and managed, you know, the photos were on the front page of Reading Chronicle, and we wrote the text explaining why we were there. And they love that. If you give them the content, they don't have to get somebody else to do it. So then the next time we did the elections bill, and there were only, it wasn't the elections bill. The next time we did the policing bill, and I think there was 6 or 7 of us maximum, but we stood in front of a Reading landmark. I think it was the town hall or something that we could kind of relate to voting. And we, in the picture, one of us was chained up trying to vote and the other was holding them back, and it said the elections bill. And we made this photo that anyone might look at because it was such, you know, that sort of thing. And again, that time they sent their own photographer from the paper to do the photos. So now we've got this relationship, and finally, because we've been trying to get in our local papers for years, so it's worked for us. It's an easy way to get into your local press. If you do some, you know, silly or eye-catching scene, I mean, we literally, for the elections bill, we taped up the people holding the placards, we taped their mouths, and it flew. So it's just a recommendation. It's worked for us finally. After years, we've cracked it.
That's really great. Jane is our absolute expert at chatting up our local journalists and keeping in with them. But I think particularly, as she's just said in the chat, making the photo more quirky, I think, is probably the real hook there. Yeah. Well,
yeah, I mean, local papers have very, you know, obviously depending on constituency, but really don't have very many staff. And so if you can provide them with a decent photograph and some copy, I mean, I've always been amazed. And the other thing as well is letters. Don't forget to write letters for the newspapers.
We've been writing letters. We've been writing letters for years, and they so rarely printed our letters. But we found with these photos, with the quirky photo, that now they sent their own photographer last time for the elections bill one, and they said, let us know when you're doing another. So and Reading, and it's so you don't need a lot of people, and if you make the photo quirky enough, anyone will say, oh, what's that? Versus if the headline is, you know, defend democracy, you know, so people won't look at it. But if you make some quirky photo,
that is absolutely great tip. We've got about 2 minutes left of our allotted time. Is there anybody? Jane's got her hand up?
Oh, just very, very quickly building on that. You're absolutely right. They don't have the staff. So provide the text, and don't be intimidated about just providing photos taken on an iPhone. They'll actually accept iPhone photos now, whereas years ago they had to be, you know, of the correct res and everything. Now they just take anything, really.
Yeah. Can I just say something as well? I noticed in the chat somebody's talking about Swap My Vote, and I really, really, really believe in Swap My Vote. It's really important. It's something I was very involved in at the last election. People do actually need to feel that their vote has been swapped. You know, it's not just. But obviously, that's part of the elections bill, is to make anything like that illegal. Any form of coordinated voter activity, that's one of the clauses. So again, if people don't know that, you really need to let people know that that's the sort of thing that's being proposed. It's you know, most of Progressive Alliance and those sort of things they're trying to get rid of them. You know, they're not just trying to change the boundaries and make people have voter ID and everything else. They're also looking to stop us working collaboratively as if we're not part of political parties, if you see what I mean. So just collaboration between activists. It's one of the things. I'm sure, I might be wrong, maybe it didn't get written into the bill, but that's certainly one of the things that they were talking about. So
that's useful to know, actually. I didn't know that. So Phil, we're running out of time. Have you got a very, very quick comment or question, and then we'll come back to Polly and just get her final thoughts?
Yep, some news from Gerrard's Cross. Here's a picture of one of our local heroes, Diane Holden, a collection for Ukraine in Gerrard's Cross town centre. Gerrard's Cross was the home of Dominic Grieve, as you know, and her story about what she encountered is amazing. She says, well, that was interesting. While most people were incredibly generous, at least 2 separate Russians called us fascists, and one unvaccinated anti-EU white van man told us Ukraine had been bombing Russia for years and this was self-defense.
Okay, right. Well,
and my experience from trying to help Dominic Grieve in the election in 2019, it made me feel really sick afterwards, was that Camp Road, the super posh road in Gerrard's Cross, where there are loads of huge houses, was one of the worst places to canvass for looking for support for Dominic Grieve, who got such incredible hostility in Camp Road, a place where there are people with money. Okay. Despite the perception that people with money are the ones who are inclined to support the EU.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for that. Chris, you got a very quick comment?
Yeah, very quickly. I put into the chat our event coming up. It's our AGM, followed by a talk by Gavin Esler. He's the Chancellor of the local university, University of Kent. It's a hybrid event, and we've done a dry run. It's going to be good. It would be great to see that some of you are there. So please do register. I've put it in all groups that I'm in. I can send it to one of you or put it, I think I'm in the Bath for Europe Facebook group. So
send it to the Facebook page and I'll pick it up from there and I'll add it on. So
thank you very much, Sally. Thank you.
So thank you for that. Is everybody else sort of covered everything? Polly, I wanted to say a huge thank you for joining us this afternoon. I think it's been a really interesting session and I've certainly learned things and I think there's been some really useful ideas there. Do you have any final thoughts you just want to add to us?
No, just get out of your silos. We must get out of our silos.
Yeah.
On Facebook, on Twitter, wherever it is, it's just so important that we go and join up with people who we might not agree with everything that they're saying. But that once we've got, if we have to get the Tories out, we have to. Sometimes we have to hold our nose in order to do that. But literally, I think we're really close to, I don't want to sound alarmist, but I think we're really close to losing. We've already had our freedom of movement removed. We've had our rights removed, okay? We are really, really close to having a lot of our other rights removed. The one bit of good news that I thought came out this week was that the Sarah Everard vigil, it came out that the police should not have been able to prevent that by threatening people with COVID restrictions, basically. They said that it couldn't go ahead because of COVID restrictions. And it came out that was against people's human rights to not be able to protest. So that's really, really good. But all it means is the government are now going to have to introduce another bill to make sure they can take away our human rights. They will do it, I promise you. So there's no time for napping on the job, no time for dreaming of rejoining the EU. We need to focus on the problem now, and the problem now is the Tories, and it is this particular Tory government. And we've got local elections coming up in May, and we really need to make sure that people know that they need to vote at the local election, that they're registered, and we have to use it as a proxy anti-government, anti-Johnson tool. Basically, it's all we've got at the moment. So just like we did it back in 2018 to 2017. We made sure that people came out and voted locally on national issues, and we're going to have to do the same. We're going to have to forget about potholes and council tax and everything else, and we're going to have to actually work to make people get out to vote as an anti-Johnson vote.
Thank you, Polly. That's been absolutely brilliant. I've really enjoyed the session. Thank you, everybody who's come along and joined in. Huge thanks to Polly as well. And apologies once again for the for the technical problems at the beginning, which was my fat fingers basically, and we will be putting this on our YouTube channel. If you want to come and have a look at our YouTube channel, I think we've got Gavin Essler on there actually, Chris, so we did have him there a while back, and so various sessions, other sessions on there as well. Yeah, and we normally meet up on the first Sunday of the month. For various reasons, lots of us were away last week, so we couldn't do it last week, so we've done this week, this month. But see us soon, although we might go actual rather than virtual soon. We might get together in the park or somewhere outdoors where we can actually meet in person. So seeing how the weather goes, we might be back online or out in the park. So thank you once again. Huge thanks to Polly, and we'll see you all soon, hopefully. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you very much.